Hello, 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 and welcome once again to NeurodiverCity Explores. My name's Kenza. I am unapologetically autistic, as well as other things. We are once again joined by the lovely Taz from Taz Thoughts LLC, which I think it's safe to say at this point, as you are literally one of our best friends from across the pond. Uh, and today we have a feature length on why we're not going to light it up blue. We don't want to light it up blue. We'd rather light ourselves on fire. So we're actually going to go red instead. So thank you once again for joining us, Taz.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to talk about it and um, not get light on fire because not going to use blue. So,
Yes. Uh, yeah, I think it's actually quite possibly one of the biggest controversial topics, really, isn't it? Because obviously you've got so many people lighting it up blue, and obviously, as we know, it was piloted from Autism well, piloted by Autism Speaks, who are a charity who push inclusion and things like that. But actually, they are actually out to find a cure. And actually, can you actually cure a neurotype? I think I thought about this, and really, the only way to stop me from being autistic and everything else is to actually just give me a brain transplant. At which point, I won't actually be me anymore.
yeah, exactly. No, it's not something that can be cured. Although, sadly, even now, there's always research and discussion on it. And that's part of why the lighted up blue, as well as the combination with the puzzle piece, is just not accepted by the autistic community because we don't support the idea that being autistic is a problem that needs to be
Yeah,
cured. It is a identity versus something that is a problem, as a lot of organizations tend to see it. And so, honestly, sadly, personally, the color blue, favorite color. However, in this context, it is not the favorite color, which is why this year autistic people are promoting autism acceptance versus autism awareness instead of that, and lighting it up red instead of blue.
yeah. I think that's it, and it's not even just acceptance, really, isn't it? It's about the empowerment. It's the we're good at these things. We're not so good at these things. So actually, embrace all of us, not just the stuff you like, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
and embracing the diversity of autistic as well, because a lot of times people tend to assume, oh, you're autistic, you do this, you don't do this, but understanding that everyone is still an individual, even if you are autistic, and it's about accepting and understanding that and not applying all of the generalizations that society has put on it to everybody.
and it's weird, because it's a massive pandemic, isn't it? That at least 99% of us don't actually look autistic.
Mhm. There is not a look. There's not like an autistic look, which people tend to wanna to focus on. I mean, I don't know how many times we have been in a job interview or at a doctor's appointment, and they're just like, "But you don't look autistic." And it's like, "And what does it look like exactly?" Like,
Yeah, it's like, should I come in looking like this or something and
yeah, it's like,
shaking repeatedly?
do I have to always wear my noise canceling headphones while I enter your
Yeah,
office in order for you to get it? Like, people tend to, but again, like, that is all based on the stereotypes and the assumptions made
that's
about
it. that's a niche for us. We can go into business together, developing masks that make you look autistic.
Oh gosh. It would be a,
Oh,
a new twist on the word masking. Like it'd be a more literal version of masking.
yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, no,
It's
and
like
I.
I'm
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it's like for me at the minute, obviously you've seen our key rings and our merch and everything else, and there's just so much merch that I would like to do. And actually we have a late arrival, so let me just welcome them in. Hey Hannah.
Hi,
So
I'm Hannah Gabrielle. Hi,
yes,
how are
sorry.
you?
So everyone, we have Hannah Gabrielle with us, who is, I feel outnumbered here because everybody's from the States and I'm the only one here in the UK, kind of thing. So we were just discussing how we are lighting it up red instead of blue, and
Hmm.
how myself and Taz don't really go with the whole autism speaks mission, so to speak. And I know you've just literally done a Medium post all around this, haven't you?
Yep, I have. I've actually created a lot of Medium posts, like two of them, which discuss about neurodiversity, autism, and ADHD. And since this month is Autism Acceptance Month, I'm going to specifically talk about autism, though, at some points I may talk about ADHD. So, yeah, basically, if I go a little bit more in depth why I joined Medium in the first place, I guess back in 2019, um, is it okay if I keep going?
Yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
Okay. So back in 2019, I've noticed that like the some of the marginalized communities in computing, most of them they didn't really focus anything on neurodiversity, or anything else besides race and gender. Both of those are important. And I myself am an Asian woman, in tech. And yes, there are a decent amount of Asians. However, there are less women in computing and certainly less women of color in uh, computing careers in the United States and globally. However, I felt none of those clubs, even the ones that targeted different marginalized groups such as women, Black and Latinx individuals, none of them really focus on intersectionality, and I was a bit worried, to say it mildly, because I understand that particularly for women, as I'm in the workplace, there are certainly less women on my team. And overall, not even the technology university program, but pretty much in the tech team, it's I see a lot more men, personally speaking. And also with Black and Latinx people in tech. When I was at Cornell, I barely saw any of them, and the only time that I could see numerous Black and Latinx people were when I was in underrepresented minorities at computing at Cornell, and I got to learn their experiences and how some Asians like to throw other racial minorities and ethnic minorities under the bus because of the amount of minority myth, which puts Asians as a good minority, and everybody else Black and Latinx people as the bad minorities. Because if Asians can do it, why can't everybody else?
Yeah.
Um, but I think that my problem was that they didn't really talk about other marginalized groups. Personally speaking, I have autism and ADHD, and I'm also bisexual. And I didn't feel like there wasn't a club representing queer people in computing, let alone queer people in STEM, along with neurodivergent and disabled people in computing. And personally, I also identify as disabled. So, there's some people, neurodivergent people who don't identify as disabled, which is also valid. But I guess with that article, I was trying to say, intersectionality matters. And
Yeah.
personally, in my experience, I've faced like direct ableism. In that specific article, um, I talked about how one of my computer science partners for a CS class, computer science class, I made the mistake of disclosing my ADHD, even though I didn't know him well.
Yeah.
Um, and he didn't believe me. Like he was like, I don't believe in it. Why don't you just focus? And the thing is that like we were working on a class project and like it's like a hall, right? But the thing was there was a full on party that was going on. Like blasting music and like all these lights and I felt like I kind of shut down, not like an autistic shutdown, but it was like I couldn't
Yeah.
focus anymore. Partially due to my ADHD, but also because I was just overstimulated with all the noise and all the like everything else in my external environment. So I didn't really work on that project per se, but that's besides the point. Um, as for like why I choose to go red instead of lighted blue, is because I have so many graphs of autism speaks. I don't even know where to start. Um, First of all, like they don't really have authentic autistic representation in their executive boards, and I think one of the few autistic people who was in Autism Speaks, he immediately left because he was so disgusted. Um, I also think go red instead because I think red, especially in autism acceptance month, it's actually cooler. And the puzzle piece, it kind of like signifies that we're just puzzles waiting to be solved. And personally, for me, I'm saying this as a highly verbal, so called high functioning autistic person with a job. Um, because, like, some people are criticizing that the neurodiversity movement doesn't really include people who are so called low functioning. I'm so sorry for using those labels, but like, sometimes people use them colloquially to like um, distinguish those who are worthy of being in society and those who aren't, which is totally wrong. And um, like, it's not inclusive of people who have high support needs. That's the
Yeah.
better term. So I think that's just part of why I prefer to not support Autism Speaks and support um, like nonprofits like the Autistic Self Advocacy Network and the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, and also like there's the Autistic People of Color Fund, so that's within like the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network. I'm so sorry, I cannot speak properly right now.
It's absolutely okay, and you know what? You've just actually nailed what me and Taz were speaking about, because we were talking about how we often get told we don't look autistic, and it's like, is there actually a look? Is there a way we should look? Does society have an expectation?
Mhm.
It's like it's just absolutely ridiculous, and I think for us as well,
Yeah, I get that
especially
comment a lot.
especially with the intersectionality as well. Uh, Definitely. I know Taz. You obviously, Taz, you do quite a bit of sub marginalisation stuff as well, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Working in the BIPOC spaces and the LGBTQIA plus spaces, and yeah, intersectionality is really important. For as you know, we do have disabilities as well as being autistic, so we kind of work in all of those spaces to bring more awareness and acceptance, because a lot of times people tend to separate them
Yeah.
instead of understanding that all of those things kind of cohabitate, and they're considered comorbid disorders. But
Mhm.
if you don't if you take off the word disorder, it's really just all of these different facets make a person, and it shapes
Yeah.
their experience in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important as well. It's like here at Neurodiversity,
Yeah,
we are definitely pro LGBTQIA plus.
that's good.
Obviously, I'm grey sexual myself. I'm
Oh,
demisexual. I have volunteers from all walks of life, and it's like the one volunteer we have. He's just out and he's just totally out and proud, and we absolutely love it. Out and proud autistic, and I think that's what this month is all about. Regardless of where your gender identity is at, regardless of what other contrasting additional needs you have. It's all about just being able to be yourself and being able to be accepted, and for people to just say, do you know what, actually, we respect that you are you. We respect that you're really good at this. We respect you're not so good at this, but don't worry that you're not so good at this. How can we help you so it's easier for you? And things like that. And I think especially where the movement's going in every single community, you have the subsects of the community. So, you do have obviously the BIPOC neurodivergent community. You do have the LGBTQIA plus community, and I actually find that when it comes to inclusion, the LGBTQIA plus scene, whether it be the neurotypical scene or the neurodivergent scene, is actually generally more inclusive of literally everyone. Because even though there's a big difference between gender identity and your additional needs, you still have the discrimination, you still have all of the negative connotations, the generalizations. So
mhm.
actually, the people inside those marginalized communities tend to be more accepting of others.
And that's true. I think it's good to be able to have that type of positive experience with it, because we've had kind of the opposite in a lot of ways, because I think it depends on the person and the environment to a high extent, because being queer and non-binary, we actually had a lot of people that we knew in the LGBT world that didn't accept that we were non-binary.
Yeah.
Like, and so they were just like, okay, well, accept that you're autistic, but oh, sorry, non-binary later, peace out. So
Oh, that
I think,
sucks.
yeah, so it depends on the person, but I would agree, like, as a whole, any marginalized community that knows what it's like to experience discrimination, lack of access, things
Wow.
that are inaccessible, and that type of inequality that only marginalized communities will understand, as a
Yeah.
whole, do tend to be way more accepting for sure than those that are part of the majority.
Yeah, I find that to be the case. Um, I haven't real. I've like met plenty of my goodness, neurodivergent people who are also LGBT plus. I have also met some like BIPOC neurodivergent people. Those are my kind of people, and it's easier to talk about like experiences such as like discrimination due to like sexuality and neurodivergence as opposed to like having to explain what neurodiversity is, my autism, my ADHD, and just like I could just jump into like, oh yeah, so by the way, like there were like several people who didn't believe that I was autistic. Like this is going a little bit off tangent because like the thing is like I'm actually at Cornell right now. I'm like, I graduated from here. I'm an alum, and um when I was still like an undergrad student at Cornell, I literally blasted Autism Speaks in a meme, and so many people try to clap back at me that I didn't look autistic because I'm so smart. I am a student at an Ivy League institution. And I was like, those two are separate things. Look, I
Yeah.
get that, you know, like some of the stereotypes of autistic people where we usually like autistic savants, and I'm like, that's not all of us. I know like an autistic person who I consider savant, but I'm not sure if he actually is. Like, he's really interested in artificial intelligence. He's so good at math, compared to me. He's like miles better than me. And honestly, like, I admire that about him, but like, we're both autistic people and we both experience different autistic symptoms. And I feel like, with autistic adults, like, we're expected to grow out of it. The same with the ADHD, right? And that doesn't happen because the autism is still there. It's not going to go away, whether like people like it or not. And also, like, um, especially because as an Asian woman, like, rarely do we see like autistic Asian women in the media. The only exception that I've heard of was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. But other than that, most of the autistic representation in media, at least in Western media, like American media, is predominantly white men. And I
Yeah.
get that, like, we need like better representation of autistic men, even like autistic white men. That's not just like atypical, the good doctor, and like have some autistic people with like non-technical interests, because like there's a lot of autistic people in media who are predominantly like interested in STEM, and that's not every autistic person. We need to erase that stereotype too. And uh, and like in real life, that kind of translates to like neurodiversity programs, but they're only for tech. And I'm in tech, and even I think like, where are the neurodiversity programs in like, say for example, law or like disability justice? Because I know plenty of autistic people who are interested in like, disability advocacy and social justice, that kind of stuff, because well, I'm like in those circles. And there's plenty of autistic people with like vast variety of interests like literature and everything else between and everything outside of STEM, but for some reason the media likes to portray autistic people in particular who are only interested in STEM, like the good doctor and like
Yeah.
biology, like and medicine. And I get that, but also I'm kind of tired of it. And I want to
Yeah.
see like more queer autistic stories, is particularly those who aren't explicitly in the LGBTQ like acronym, or maybe like
Yeah.
BIPOC, autistic people, and then like autistic people who are BIPOC and LGBTQ plus. The day that I see that on media, I'm literally gonna cry if it's like an authentic representation.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Because obviously, see, it's absolutely great because all of us here, I think even you, Taz, you love technology as well, don't you? Uh, and I think I think it's like when Women in Tech as a scheme came out, that was absolutely amazing. We love that. In neurodiversity, our second in command is actually a woman in tech. She does penetration testing, cybersecurity, everything. Yet actually, when you see all of the adverts for these tech companies, it's normally as white cis males who get all of the photo shoots, and then it wasn't until the Women in Tech campaign came out that everybody actually started putting women at the forefront of technology. For us, we work with so many neurodivergent women in tech. And I'm definitely going to have to do a shout out as well to all of the digital and UX designers, who actually make a living from doing all of the intricate work for developing user interfaces and everything else. And even the female code monkeys as well. As a code monkey myself, I absolutely love it when I have to call up another company and it's actually a female code monkey on the other end of the phone, because it's like, yes, stereotypes are being broken down here. Whereas if you look at things like the IT crowd, for example, it's actually the female character Jen is the manager, but isn't really techy. Whereas that's actually not, even though it's like a satire comedy, it's not really a true representative visual of the real world, so to speak. So Taz, I'm gonna
Mm.
pass the mic over to you for a second, Taz, seeing as we're on the whole technology thing. And I think this month technology is great because obviously the majority of everyone's reach to make awareness has been by technology. So, what is it you like about technology, Taz?
So yeah, so the one thing that about tech, so first of all, love like software. So definitely more of a software person than a hardware person. Cannot code at all. That is not a skill, but like setting up a like integration using Zapier, like that's more like our wheelhouse. And whilst tech has broken down a lot of stereotypes with different communities, it's also created new ones, which is a problem. And the reason this is an issue is at, for example, I don't know how many times I've had recruiters, I have had people that work in different tech companies DM because they think because we're autistic, we're automatically going to want to work in tech and we're going to want to code and we're going to know how to code. Literally, just out of the blue, have gotten messages like, hey, noticed you're autistic. We're hiring some autistic people for coding. And it's like, okay, so whilst some people are good at that, some people enjoy it, not every autistic person will be able to do that. And not every autistic person wants to do that. And so whilst it has open doors, at the same time, it creates this assumption of like, oh, you're autistic, therefore you're good at technology, when that is not reality. Because not everyone will be. It's a diverse community within itself. There's some people that are autistic that are great at writing music, writing like a whole orchestra, doing a ballad, doing poetry. There's people that may be actors. There's people that learn languages and are experts in linguistics. There's people that have their PhD, people that don't. And so a lot of times that stereotype lingers and actually closes doors for people because they want to fit you into this bubble of autistic is, and then list whatever you want to list
Yeah,
after that.
one
And
size
so
fits all.
exactly. There's this one size fits all approach, especially in education and in the workplace. And people, because being autistic has lacked accurate research, because it has always been biased towards cisgender males that are white. And because of that, there isn't actually an accurate distribution of information on what autism is and what it actually means. So people only see what I'm going to call it propaganda, just because I feel like at this point the puzzle piece is propaganda. Whilst I will, though, acknowledge that some people that are autistic do not mind the puzzle piece, and I do not speak for everyone. And if you don't mind about the puzzle piece, that's 100% valid, and it is your, like, that's, do you. But personally, like, I feel like it's more propaganda of like, okay, here's what this means, dot, 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 but it's not inclusive of what actually the autistic experience is, which is also one of the reasons that this month in particular, it's important all the time, but this month, because the world watches, that's why it's great to see so many advocates and autistic people coming out and being like, hey, here's what we want you to hear. Here's what we want you to see. Don't listen to this. Hear the voices of those that are autistic instead of looking to the people and organizations that have built themselves on top of the autistic community.
Yeah, I totally get that, and it's actually been a common theme today. Because I've been doing loads of meetings today with customers around accessibility and how everybody is like, well, do you know what? We're compliant with ADA and the American with Disabilities Act. We're compliant with WCAG, the World Wide Web Consortium Accessibility Guidelines. And the fact remains, well, you say you're compliant, but actually you've ran your website through a machine that tells you you're compliant. Now, the machine can't be autistic, it can't be dyslexic, it can't be dyspraxic, it can't be ADHD. All it actually sees is the technological element. So actually, you can have a website which is all just red with white writing, and the WCAG will say, yeah, you're compliant, but actually, you're not, because red is actually the biggest, red, I believe, is the biggest problem colour for dyslexics. So just because a computer says you're compliant, it doesn't mean that your work's kind of done. Because again, WCAG is heavily reliant on the medical model, which tends to have a one size fits all approach, which isn't actually accurate. The medical model itself is a baseline. It's a baseline. It's not always 100% accurate because you get so many misdiagnoses. But actually, there's no substitute for neurodivergent experience. If you want to get inclusive, if you're taking inclusion seriously, get a neurodivergent involved. If you're recruiting a equality and diversity champion, well, actually, put the neurodivergent candidate above the neurotypical candidate, because I think, especially for all of us here, it's we want you to speak with us, not about us, kind of thing. If I actually had a cold call because I took my car in for repair, for example, it would actually be a nice experience for me to have the dealership was like, we noticed you got a bit overwhelmed while you was in the showroom. We just wanted to check, make sure that you're doing okay, kind of thing, and things like that. And actually, we saw you got overwhelmed. If you don't mind us asking, how could we actually make it less overwhelming for you next time? Kind of thing. So, passing the same question on to you, Hannah Gabrielle. What is it about tech you like?
Um, so I work in tech. I work in a tech job at a bank. So I'm gonna be extremely biased. Um, like funny thing enough, like I wanted to work in aerospace as a mechanical engineer or aerospace engineer. Clearly, that didn't work out because I'm in tech instead. Um, so for me, what I like about tech, especially because it gave me the tools to get a job. And, I think tech is so interdisciplinary, particularly because, like, the field that I really like within tech and computer science in general is actually human computer interaction. And some people would think, as an autistic person, you don't want to communicate with others, but that's not always true. There's autistic people who are more sociable or are more extroverted than others. I am actually very introverted, but I can like mask my autistic symptoms, especially when I'm in social situations when like most of the people don't know what autism is or what neurodiversity is, point blank, period. Um, and what I like about tech is that I can combine it with my other like special interest. I like writing a lot, and explaining tech to people who aren't in tech, like particularly those who aren't nearly as like tech savvy. It's a nice challenge for me
Yeah.
personally. So that's what some of the Medium articles I do, and also with human computer interaction, like I got to see like how humans like they interact with technology, for example, and say like one of my interests within human computer interaction is seeing like how mental health is being affected when humans using technology, especially during the pandemic. Um, and for me, it's like really refreshing to see how technology can like change society and how society is changed by technology, etc. However, there's a lot of problems within tech, like moderation, like say for example, there was the autism challenge back in 2020. It was so inappropriate. I'm not even gonna like redo what happened in the challenge even approximately, because like it's gonna like the movements mock autistic people. And so it's kind of like shouldn't have TikTok like remove that autism challenge much earlier? Like should the user be banned? Like I know like obviously like users who create inappropriate challenges like the autism challenge, they should get severe consequences. However, what are the consequences they should be receiving for creating that challenge, and like the users who participate in the challenge, and like other controversies such as like the super straight movement and how like some super straights are declaring that they're super straight and they don't want to admit that they're transphobic, which
Yeah.
is a serious problem. Even in the LGBTQ plus community, you would think that like a marginalized group would not try to further marginalize others. But there's a lot of transphobia in the LGBTQ plus community, unfortunately, and a lot of biphobia too. But um, there's like a lot of tech ethics, and I'm also involved with like two nonprofits like Design Justice and All Tech is Human to like discuss these kind of issues along with like other ethical problems within tech, and like how much like control should like big tech companies and like online social media platforms have over our life, and like you know and like the other kind of discriminations that happen, such as like racism in tech and queer phobia in tech, and just like trying to get as many people from diverse backgrounds as
Yeah.
possible. And like I'm openly autistic in both of those groups. Like it's actually a lot more comfortable to like disclose my autism, because like at least the people there in those two nonprofits, they're like at least liberal and at most progressive. And like I kind of get the feeling that I would be able to do that better in a more progressive space. Whereas in Cornell, there's like a mix of like people conservative, liberal, moderate, progressive, and I often get more negative experiences disclosing both my sexuality and my neurodiversity, because, some people may understand autism as we're all a little autistic, or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And um, especially for people who haven't been exposed to autistic people at all in the media or even in real life, they might like make some misconceptions about like, autistic people and other neurodivergent people in general. Because I got the comment behind my back saying, "Oh, she's the weird girl." Like weird is a relative term, right? And
Yeah.
if I'm weird because I heard one of the reasons was because I like reading, then okay. So so what if I like reading books? Sometimes like books are like, less judgmental than human
Yeah.
beings. So um, you know, being called the weird girl, like it did bother me a lot back then because they were doing it behind my back. Um, I would have probably confronted those assholes, excuse my language, but you know, like saying with the autism and tech and that sort of thing, like saying that being autistic, I think for me it's much better. Not used as an insult, which is notorious in the online gaming community, is better than being called weird for
Yeah.
any unspecified reason.
I think that's it totally. You know, to answer my own question, I have always had tech as a special interest. You know, my special interests are music, especially singing. I sing. You've got tech, all things tech. We love tech. We have so many gadgets, it's just untrue. Then, as well as that, business and law. And I think the problem is, and if we actually flip this head a little bit, uh, the neurotypical community. Uh, Now, I hate to generalize, and I'll put my content warning on here. But I tend to find that the neurotypical community will suddenly realise actually I need a job. I'm short of money, so I'm going to go and work for McDonald's and flip burgers, or I'm going to be a server at Taco Bell, or whatever. Whereas actually, the neurodivergent community are that hyper self aware that we're actually like, okay, these are the things we're interested in. We're not going to do anything else. Kind of thing. It's like, I want to get into tech. Do you know what? I'm going to keep going until somebody does give me a chance. Whereas for most people, they just kind of settle. And it's, for me, tech. Working with tech all day is absolutely amazing because my servers do what I tell them to. They don't answer me back. They're not prejudicial. If I do something wrong, it tells me I've done something wrong. It doesn't beat around the bush. You know, I've always got that constant feedback. Okay, you're about to delete this. Are you sure you want to delete this? And you're about to exit. You haven't saved the changes. Do you want us to save the changes first? And it's actually more of a linear approach. It's actually, what time is it? It's 21:21. We passed the 9 p.m. watershed. So actually, it's a no bullshit approach to interaction, kind of thing. Yet, if I was when I blunt to people, and I'm definitely well known for speaking my mind. But because I'm being so blunt and actually not taking 10 minutes to beat around the bush, I'm rude, I'm arrogant, I'm condescending. And actually, no, that's just my conversation style. And I think, especially with these tech companies as well, especially around social media, they are actually systemically part of the problem. Because if we look at Facebook, for example, sorry, Mr. Zuckerberg or Meta, whatever you want to call yourselves nowadays, actually, what you're doing is you are actually running a massively biased platform, because every single one of your community standards are community standards by a neurotypical societal standard point of view. So actually, what's happening is out of pretty much the 40% of the world being neurodivergent statistics. What you're actually doing is you're actually removing a voice from 40% of people. Because if they're blunt and somebody who doesn't actually know them thinks they're rude, what you're actually doing is you're chucking them in Facebook jail for a week. You are
Oh
penalising
my
them
god.
for
You
communicating.
actually landed in Facebook jail?
I know loads of neurodivergents who have, and actually, I'm going to put my trigger warning up here. But if you're actually saying to a neurodivergent, actually, we're going to put you in Facebook jail because you have offended one person, without them actually understanding the context, then actually, Mr. Facebook, what you're doing is actually tantamount to ABA, because you are trying to force our brains to work in a way they are not designed to work effectively. So although you boast your inclusion and everything else, there is still very slight discriminations there if you actually look at it. And it's the same in companies as well. If I was to turn around to somebody in the workplace uh, and just go with one of my generic canned responses when somebody says hello, like "Hey, beautiful," and I ended up in front of human resources for sexual harassment or something like that, actually, that isn't actually me harassing anybody. That is a generic response I have used my whole life, and also one of the things society has taught me. Even with pronouns and everything else, occasionally we'll momentarily forget pronouns, and it's not that we're deliberately invalidating a person, it's because we've generally forgot. Uh, and, the main problem from our perspective is that actually people are basing acceptance on certain things without actually looking at the bigger picture. Did I miss the advertisement from Facebook saying actually we're revamping our community guidelines? We are looking for people from different walks of life to collaborate with us on a system which is actually fair. Now we've just had a Facebook comment as well. Paula, I've actually had loads of Facebook warnings because I've been myself, and especially with neurodiversity, we're currently working on our own social network just for neurodivergence. Well, with neurodivergence in mind, but open to everyone. And the thing is, if I get a Facebook warning for being myself from Facebook, I'm autistic with a pathological demand profile. If you turn around and say if you do something like this again, you're going to be banned or end up in Facebook jail. Actually, I've got a PDA profile, so bring it on, mofo, because as soon as you say don't do this, I'm automatically going to go against you, and you're going to punish me for something which is not actually a conscious response for me. My brain automatically does it.
Mhm.
So Taz, we're going to go back to you for a minute, and I, if you feel comfortable doing so, I know we have about 30 to 40 minutes left on the live. So, is there any pressing topics you would like to bring up? Because I know I've definitely had my bitch fest here.
I think that in relation to just what everyone was talking about, there's always going to be censorship on online platforms and censorship in workplaces, and honestly some of it is just humanity. It's the way society operates.
Yeah.
And so whilst we definitely do agree that there has to be an understanding of neurodiversity within the platforms that are online, within like your Instagrams, which is also run by Meta. Actually, I'm seeing a pattern here. Anyway,
Yeah.
like your Twitters, your Instagram, but I think that at the same time, the reality of those platforms is there's always going to be a level of either people having to censor themselves or they do it for you, and they're never going to do it on like fairly, of course,
Yeah.
which is why there's certain opinions on certain platforms that will automatically hold merit above others because of who runs it, no matter what that platform is. And so at the same time, we feel there still has to be, for the neurodivergent people, there still is accountability though.
Yeah.
Even if it is because of your neurodiversity or because of something with a disability that you do a certain thing, that doesn't automatically make it okay. And I think sometimes that's the problem that happens when people go online, no matter if you're neurodivergent or not. People tend to have this sense of entitlement,
Yeah.
like, oh, I should be able to say this because this. It's like, oh, I can say this because I am this race, or I can say this
Yeah.
and you can't because I have a disability and you don't. Like, it's just becomes this back and forth, when in reality, it's, if you're rude to someone, you're rude to someone. Take
Yeah.
accountability. If you're nice to someone, you're nice to someone. Take accountability. There's all of this back and forth, no matter what community you're a part of. And so it's one of those things where it's like, either is there a algorithm within these platforms that is scanning for certain things that then gets people banned? Of course it does. Will people always get warnings? No, because honestly, there's not a person sitting behind a screen picking out every single neurodivergent person saying,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to get them for this, oh, I'm going to get them for this. It's all AI, it's all bots. If it's in a person, if a person is reviewing it, it's because there's a grievance that's been filed, like, yo, why am I banned? And then they have to manually
Yeah.
review. But these big companies, like, they don't focus on anything other than making money. That is their goal. So whatever makes money isn't going to necessarily mean it's going to be inclusive.
Profit over people. And do
Exactly.
you know what, Taz? I'm sorry to cut you off there. And this is what I'm saying, there still needs to be that level of accountability. But at the same time, if you actually look at the distress it can cause a neurodivergent person to be removed from Facebook for 48 hours when that's actually the only way they socialise, actually, what's to stop Facebook from implementing a setting in your settings, so it's a little checkbox, for example, to say I'm neurodivergent, and actually there's a mechanism, so when you actually post, there's actually before you post it, it actually comes up with a confirmation checkbox. Have you read what you're about to post? We do an online safety course, and we always say that if you're going to post something on social media, read it first. If somebody said this to you, would it offend you? Would you be upset at this? And actually, it's a tactic we employ quite a lot, because no matter how many emojis you use, there is no, they can't see your face, they can't hear the tone of your voice or anything else. But at the same time, places like Facebook, especially for the especially for the neurodivergent community, should actually have a section of the website, this is how you can reduce the chance of you getting into Facebook jail, rather than just saying this, and this. Actually have an understanding approach, where you're actually educating your users and actually giving them life skills, rather than just saying you can't say this, you can't say that.
Well, and definitely, I mean, it can be when all your communication is online, like we know how that is. That's how ours is, and it is stressful if you can't access something. However, in the end, Facebook is a business, and while I don't expect them to do that, honestly, just because it's their business, that's in for making money, and there's scandals with them all the time. But I think and this is honestly unpopular opinion, and we acknowledge that we have an unpopular opinion on that, but neurodivergent or not, you are still responsible
Yes.
for what you consume online. You're still responsible for your presence online, and you're still responsible for finding out if the information isn't there. Then it's your job as the person to find out what you need to take preventative measures for yourself, because the world isn't going to give it to you. So, while should they do that? Of course they should. Are they going to? Probably not. So then it falls
Yeah.
upon each person using whatever platform it is to take responsibility for themselves and what they need to know in order to successfully manage their own things.
Yeah, and that's it. And the problem is, because all of these topics are kind of taboo as well, it's not actually easy to find that information. So actually, that's a really good idea. Thank you, Taz. That maybe that's something neurodiversity can get a kind of panel of people together to actually do something like a social media boot camp kind of thing to actually educate and kind of put the points of society on the whole, whether it be neurodivergent or neurotypicals, that actually these are problems we found we had. This is how we've kind of got around them. This is how we have grew as people to stop X, Y, and Z from happening of us, kind of thing. Because it's not just about content. I'll be the first one to admit it. You know, I'm 32 years old, and even I know I am vulnerable. You know, I know that online I'm actually at significantly more risk than out in the real world. Kind of thing. Yet there's not a lot of places that actually help us realize that. And especially if you're still young and haven't really got that hyper self awareness yet, these are the life skills you actually need to know. These are the things you need to develop and thrive. So, what's your thoughts on social media, Hannah Gabrielle?
Um, I have mixed feelings about them because I definitely like social media because I can connect with people, especially like relatives who are in the United States, where I live, because I have family all over the world. Um, like say for example, like some of my relatives are in Singapore, some of them are in the Philippines, right? And you know, like especially like when communicating with them, like back in the day, it was like you literally had to use I think it was like a card to call internationally.
Yeah,
Oh my god. And like it costs so much money, but now you can just use Messenger or WhatsApp. Um to like call someone or even just like text them. It's so much easier nowadays, because like I can connect with like people internationally, like particularly family and relatives, and I don't have to like pay with a phone card. Well, at least my mom did. But you know and I can connect with people with like-minded beliefs and interests. So say for example, I am on a lot of subtle Asian groups. There's like this group like called Subtle Asian Leftovers, which is a spin-off of Subtle Asian Traits. If people don't know what Subtle Asian Traits is, it's basically just showing like common traits within Asians. That group really caters to like East Asians. Sometimes they have like some content for Vietnamese, Filipino, and other like Asians who are East Asians. But I think that Subtle Asian Leftovers, I think there are more thought provoking discussions. You know,
yeah,
on like what it means to be Asian, and like, you know, some of the things that like Asian people have to like face, either because of their family and their cultural values, or, you know, just because like, you know, being considered a leftover, which is like, it's, I don't know if it exists in other Asian cultures, but I know in Chinese culture it's like, you know, if you're over a certain age and you're still not married, you're considered a leftover. um yeah, I think the age is like, you know, 30, but I'm gonna have to check later. Anyway, so they have discussions on like, what would you like in a partner? Because I find that society is obsessed with like people having relationships. I don't know why. It's fine being single. And they have this like, um they have some discussions on what makes a good partner, and like the most recent one was like, what was the rudest thing you said to someone? And like lots of people, including myself, have said like things, you know, mean things to like our like partners or ex partners, you know. And I find that like, you know, bonding over like, you know, first of all being Asian, and two, wanting to like communicate with people about like topics that are more serious, gives me like a chance to like potentially find new friends, which I have like online friends. But the downsides of social media, I like promoting my work and stuff. It can kind of feel spammy sometimes. The downsides of social media, on Twitter, I actually cannot swear anymore. I don't know why they implemented this, but if I try to swear, they're gonna warn me that like I cannot swear anymore and I have to change the language. On Facebook, this is particularly wild, and like Twitter doesn't do this. Like if you say the word white on Facebook, you're gonna get warned. And like, you know, especially in activist communities, you know, like predominantly led by people of color, it's just we have to like find other ways to say the word white, like F6, which is like the hex code for like
Yeah.
saying white, or just using like anything that like features white. I don't know why it's considered offensive to say the word white, but there are some wild like ways you can get in Facebook jail, like saying the word white, or like on Twitter, like swearing. And it's just like some of these like rules and like guidelines to make it a safe space and not land in Facebook jail or any other jail and other social media platform is flat out ridiculous. I haven't experienced this with like online platforms meant for like book lovers like Goodreads and Storygraph, but you know, regular social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram,
Yeah.
like whatever, not Medium as far as I know, have some of the wildest and nonsensical rules to like stay as a member on their platform. I'm just like, how did this rule get created? And also just like, especially when it comes to politics, and you know, social justice sometimes. I don't experience this as much because I don't engage in those kind of Facebook groups anymore. But if you say something that's considered out of line, you know, people are gonna jump on you. And like, if you have a really unpopular opinion, like especially in activist circles, sometimes you're gonna just get
Yeah.
um like jumped, and you're not going to have a in-person discussion of why that was inappropriate. You're just going to get jumped and like banned.
Yeah, I think that's it. And the problem you have there is the majority of the censorship now. The majority of the censorship is based on words. So if they spot a certain word, hey presto, the comment gets hidden, comment gets removed. Whereas actually, again, just like computers can't see the colours of your website, it can't actually see the context you're using the word in. You know, it's like if we put Google under scrutiny, if we put Google under scrutiny for a minute here, It was about 5 years ago that Google's algorithm left them open to a lawsuit because when you typed in "a white guy just stole my car," it says, "Did you mean a black guy just stole my car?" You know, again, it's computers automatically doing it, and Google had a massive lawsuit over that, and I can definitely agree why. But again, it just goes to reinforce the fact we cannot rely on artificial intelligence for literally everything. And I think moving the topic on as well from what you touched earlier on, relationships. Oh, as a neurodivergent individual, relationships are just like my worst nightmare ever. I often get asked, when are you getting married and when you're going to settle down and everything else. And I'm like, well, when I can actually find somebody who will ignore me for like 22 hours a day, then I'll actually think about it. Because obviously being neurodivergent does have an impact on your relationship, especially when we've dated neurotypicals. There's been times where we're not okay, we've just needed space, and next thing you know, our partner's in our face, "What's the matter? Just talk to me." And it's like, does it not occur to you that I can't actually explain what's going on with me? At least give me time to process, and then I'll be able to have a discussion with you. Do you know what? I'm going to have to ask you, Taz, because this question has been burning at me for a week. But Taz,
Oh, that sucks.
in your opinion, Taz, what is the key to a successful relationship?
Ah, that question. So, context coming from like, we have now been married to our partner for 4 years, and the secret to this working is he is also neurodivergent. That is the secret. That is the secret. That honestly, I think for especially for us, you can't relate to a neurotypical person in the way that people expect. And it comes to communication, when it comes to like understanding struggles, sensory issues, like all of that. A neurotypical person that has not experienced that themselves doesn't fully get it. They may get it from like a person looking in, but when you've lived it, you have the ability to understand what's happening without talking about it.
Yeah,
You have that ability. Like, for us, we're super sound sensitive with our sensory processing. Our partner isn't, has other sensory things but not sound. So like, if we're walking down the block and there is a fire truck coming by, and we have a cognitive processing delay, so we don't always process fast enough. So literally, like, our partner will hear it before us, know it's coming, and just cover our ears instantly before we even know, like, oh, there's a fire truck, and he'll just do it. It's like little things like that. It's that like unspoken, I guess, companionship, but a
yeah.
deeper level, because we know he gets it. Like, he gets it. So that's what we think the secret is he's not neurotypical. So that's why it works.
Here you go on Tinder profiles. What are you looking for? A neurodivergent or a closet neurodivergent? It's like you saying that as well, Taz. It kind of set my ADHD brain off a second, and I just thought to myself, what would I do if I'd been in a relationship with somebody? I'd moved in with somebody. I got home, and suddenly the house is all blue, and they're like, "We appreciate you, so we wanted to light it up blue for you." I'd be like, "Yeah, thanks very much. Do me a favour. On your way out with your bags, just make sure you switch everything off."
Right? It's like turn off the lights. Well, no, and like I think that's the other thing too is like understanding, especially I think when it comes to sensory things, like with
Yeah,
sensory processing disorder, which is a common trait for autistic people, but other types of neurodivergencies will also have sensory processing. So it's more common than people know. And the thing is, it's like in the space in which you live, as coming from an autistic perspective, you need it to be conducive to your sensory so that you can actually have a place that you can feel safe away from the noise of the world. And when you have someone that may not understand what that entails, there can be like a lack of tolerance. There can be a, well, why do you need that? Like, no, I want the light on. No, I need it off. Like it causes a lot of conflict in that relationship because there isn't that understanding of I'm autistic. It's not a bad thing. It's just different.
yeah.
And I need things a different way than you do. And so,
Different ability.
right. Well, and this probably is relevant. And so, in a space, right? So, a lot of people need their space. So, like for us, we have lived in the same place we are now, which is a studio with our partner for 4 years. We don't fight. We don't have issues. Everything's fine. And the reason that we don't, people are like, how do you live in a tin can for 4 years? Like, I need space. It's like, that's the thing. We have space. It's like that side of the room. We know, like, if he's over there with his headset on, okay, don't bother him. He knows if we're over on the other side and we have our headset on, don't bother them. Like, it's super not complicated.
Yeah.
And it's really about like a mutual respect for each other's needs, which is easier to get from people that have that like understanding of what you need.
Honey, can we talk about this? Yeah, we can, but do me a favour. Can you WhatsApp it or Discord it to me?
Yeah, do you know what? Yes, we will literally be sitting next to each other and texting because sometimes you just can't talk.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just easier to write it down, and
Yeah,
sometimes texting is easier than talking.
Oh yeah.
And it's less stressful. And you could just sit there. You could just sit there, watch a movie, and text each other holding hands watching the movie. It's not a
yeah,
big deal. If it works, it works.
yeah. Do you know what? I get that because there are at certain points where I will actually totally lose my ability to speak. In which case I'll either send a message on my phone or I'll actually use an app. So I press a few buttons and the phone speaks for me.
Yeah,
Oh.
Kind of
same,
thing.
same.
It, it I've actually had an argument with someone using text to speech before, and that is just like the best thing ever. It's hilarious
Oh my gosh.
because
Now I want to try that.
the, co- the, com-
Yeah, me neither.
the computer just doesn't know that you're angry or anything else. It actually has no emotion in the sound, so it's actually quite hilarious. It's like listening to like a raunchy book on Audible, for example. You get to the explicit scenes where when you're reading the book you'd get all excited and everything else, but when hearing it you're just like, what?
Right? That text to speech sound. Anything can sound funny with that monotone text to speech
Yeah.
sound. Well, and like
Uh,
we also have that. Like we get nonverbal a lot, really. And we're fluent in ASL because of that, but our partner isn't.
yeah.
So we just have learned to like we write it down. Or you know what? Phones have also this feature where you can call and then you can switch to the RTT, I think it's called, where you
Yeah.
can like type in the phone call live. And we do
Yeah.
that a lot too.
Oh, that's so cool.
It, that feature is it's a lifesaver. It's so and it's really and it's also good too when you have someone that knows what you need and you're able to then rely on them to also like verbalize what you need out in different circumstances, which is hard to get a lot of times because you really have to trust that person will know what they need and how to like execute it properly. I lost my train. Anyway, that was it. I'm gonna stop there. I lost it.
What's your thoughts of communication and what's your
Relationships.
thoughts on communication and relationships then, Hannah Gabrielle?
Um, I think that communication with autistic people and like other neurodivergent people is completely different from like interacting with neurotypicals. I'm in a relationship with a neurotypical person. I took the time to explain my autism and how my autism shows up. Um, and like I also have auditory processing disorder, which is like amplified while driving, and he notices this because sometimes I, I try to like I can hear perfectly, right? Like despite playing the violin in an orchestra for like more than 5 years, because like like sometimes when you play music, everything's just blaring, but it's more of like processing auditory information. And sometimes I interpret this wrong, and it was like, oh, so that's actually what you meant, not this. Um, and like another thing that I experienced, like communicating with neurodivergent people in general. I've pretty much like in like the type of neurodivergent people I interact with are like mainly autistic people and people with ADHD. We just like info dump. There's not as much judgment, like
Yeah,
especially if we have common like special interests. Not even just in tech, but also being in STEM, and having similar beliefs. And even if we don't have like all like so many like special interests in common, like for example, I have this autistic friend in Australia who is interested in aerospace and like space. No, it's actually space. Never mind. Space. He just info dumps me about that. I info dump him about something else. Say for example, autism or like autistic advocacy in the United States or what it's like living in the United States.
um,
We don't really like judge each other for like info dumping because
yeah,
literally that's what I feel when a lot of autistic people communicate with each other, and like even people with ADHD communicate with each other. We just go all out with info dumping, which is like basically just dumping all the information about like something, whether if it's a special interest or not. We just dump it all to each other. But like, I feel like with neurotypical people, I think it's more of like you have to reciprocate to this, reciprocate to that, which isn't bad. Like, there are benefits to it. It's just like I feel like with some neurotypical people, with the exception of some neurotypical people in my life, who I liked, like my boyfriend and some of the professors that I've encountered who are accepting of my neurodivergence, I feel like they can get a lot more judgmental if you're not considered okay or at least good in social skills. And they're gonna call you weird behind your back, like, oh, look at that weird girl. Oh, why does she communicate like that? That sort of thing. Um, I think that like the secret to a relationship, if you're dating a neurotypical, let them know how your neurodivergence shows up in daily life. Especially because like I think nearly 99% of the time, at least in my case, I'm like highly verbal. I just don't shut up. But like the 1% chance I go nonverbal because of an autistic meltdown, like the last one I had was in 2019. I find it so physically painful to speak. I can't even speak. I can't even like walk around
yeah,
everywhere. It's just too painful. And I told my boyfriend, hey, so if I go completely nonverbal, I might use text to speech,
yeah,
just to get like verbal communication out of the way. Um, he also has seen my autistic meltdowns and like other related things like a PTSD attack. Um, I'm really sorry for not warning any of y'all about this, but like sometimes I would like get flashbacks to like really traumatic events in my life. Not
yeah,
gonna detail any further, but also like knowing what to do, and like even though he can't completely like erase away like my symptoms from my PTSD or OCD, I can try to say, hey, so during this type of situation, when I have flashbacks, you can just hold me, you can just comfort me and reassure
Yeah.
me that, this is just a flashback. It's not actually reality. With autistic meltdowns, it's kind of similar, just comforting. Like physical touch is like my love language. So, that
Yeah.
that in particular works for me.
Okay, that's absolutely amazing. I think the thing I love the most about my neurodivergent friends is when we're on a phone call and I'm done, I'll be like, bye then, and hang up, and they they automatically know, yep, conversation's done, that's all good. Whereas I listen to some people who will be going like, bye, 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 and everything counts for 5 minutes, and I'm just like, just hang up the damn phone already. But at the same time, I also find that if somebody is info dumping on me, for example, I can turn around to them and say, "Hold on a second, haven't caught up. Let's come back to this." Kind of thing, and we're actually and it's all done in respectful manners with no judgment and everything else. So I think that's another skill I use, especially with my friend-related dynamics. Uh,
Having that like boundary is
yes.
good. And like when you said that, we are very okay. Once we start, we don't shut up. We can go for hours, hours, especially if it's on one of our special interests
Our
in our
conversations the other week after the live.
yes,
Oh
yes,
god.
exactly. And so like for us with our partner, like he's kind of the opposite. He's more like chill. He's super chill, and he can get overwhelmed if you're like throwing a bunch of stuff at him at one time. So we have code words that we use. So
Oh.
right now we are absolutely utterly obsessed with Machine Gun Kelly and his new album that just came out, Mainstream Sellout. Not sponsored, just obsessed. And and so like we just start like going. So like the code word now is like if we're talking and we don't pause, like we don't breathe, we don't pause, we just talk. And so now he'll just look at us and be like, babe, you're doing a Machine Gun Kelly, because we think of like a machine gun going like really, really, really fast. And we also love the music right now. So then we'll be like, oh, so it's like a cue for us to like,
Yeah.
okay, slow down and pause and breathe. And so like it's a way of him not having to be like, be quiet, shut up now. Like he doesn't have to do
Yeah.
that. It's just like we instantly know, like, oh, we're overwhelming him. Okay, let's breathe for a minute and pause.
Yeah, do you know what? I totally get you there, because one thing that I find is I'm very hypersensitive to people being disingenuous. So I can actually tell when people, without realizing, start showing that they're bored or whatever else.
Mm.
But then actually one of our old bosses, she would just turn around to me and say, "Kenza, STFU," kind of thing, and I'd be like, okay, fair enough. And I actually had the respect for that, because actually, if you're not gonna tell us and you're just gonna look bored or whatever else, then actually, how are we ever supposed to be able to recognise social cues? Because again, social cues, not our strong
Mhm.
point. Eye contact, not our strong point. There's actually been times where I've really struggled to where I've been literally stimming so much and struggling to verbalize, because I'm short of breath and everything else, and watching the other person stimming in front of me makes me stim even more. That I end up having to stand back to back with somebody, stand back to back with them, and then talk,
Mhm.
so that we can't visually see them stimming, kind of thing. Again, it's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of autistic life, isn't it? Where you pick up so many coping strategies and find ways around everyday things that you wouldn't even normally think of. Uh,
Ex-
and it's amazing. It's like
Mm.
I love going shopping and seeing little kids walking around proud of their e-defenders and everything else. It makes my soul happy.
It is. And I think that's a big piece of it. Like you said, I love that analogy, a Swiss Army knife. Like, as an autistic person, you learn through your life that society won't always accept you. So
Yeah.
you have to build that tool for yourself. But at the same time, you then learn to accept yourself and actually love those parts about yourself that other people don't like or find frustrating. And so, like, really, self autism acceptance also includes accepting yourself as autistic
Yeah.
and realizing that there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. There's not a problem with how you operate in the world. It's the world's problem, and they just have to catch up. So you do the best you can with the tools you have, but ultimately, as long as you can love yourself, it doesn't matter what the other people say about you.
Yes. Absolutely, and you know what? That's actually a perfect sentiment because I see we are coming up to the end of allotted time. So first and foremost, you know, happy happy Autistic Acceptance Month, everyone. It's a good month. We've got a load more to do yet, but it's definitely a good month. I think it's that month where suddenly we all go into overdrive and our passion starts shining through for what we want and what we believe in. Taz, Hannah Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining me because it's been yet again an amazing stream. And to all of you watching, thank you for joining us. Uh, we have been us and you have been you. And we'll see you again for our next Neurodiversity Explores. So have a good week.